We're live.
Okay. Alrighty, again, good afternoon, everyone. And we've got a narrow agenda this time. So we'll start at the top with, did I say Councilmember Evans?
He's here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay. So let's start at the top with finance.
Yep, and I'll be brief. Not much to report. You all got the finance questions. I know there were a couple of questions that were asked in the agenda review. So there is one ARPA related thing that's in finance related to, I believe it was the, I forgot which number that is, but there was one thing there, but nothing major really in finance for this month. The other thing I'll just touch on, because I gotta drop off probably in like 20 minutes, was 333. We didn't meet this past month, and so there's not much more to report there. And on the convention center, obviously we're continuing to wait to see if we start seeing these large scale gatherings start to happen. They do have something scheduled, but whether or not it gets back to the normal level, obviously is still predicated and continued on what happens with COVID as we go through the coming months. So that's what I have. Okay.
So you mentioned 333, and I believe our item for school district is in public safety and human service. But I want to share with you the results of a call that I had. It was a long message. I wasn't able to get the call from President White. Van White called and left a message regarding the odd, what appeared to be an odd action for their vote. He said that he wanted to explain that he and the mayor had agreed about the police outside of school, and everybody was on board. Well, not everybody. When they initially at the board level, there was it was a narrow vote, but it was a vote in favor of. The change came about because one of the people in parent leadership said that she had talked to 100 parents, who said that they opposed having police outside of the school. So the board members were reluctant to move forward in the face of that. That's why this thing about doing a survey and all of that came up. They expect to vote on this, get some kind of a survey done, and take action as was planned before, maybe in about 3 or 4 days.
And they said Tuesday, I believe they said on Tuesday they're going to revisit it after they do this robo poll thing that they talked about. And what I said to folks is, we'll await their decision, but they just need to decide what they want to do, because I know that that's on the agenda for our committee meetings on, is it Thursday?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but yeah, it was odd that they wanted to table it to kind of do this informal robo poll before they decided how they want to move on that. I believe their meeting is tomorrow.
So he wanted to be clear that, they were not, just sort of shifting their position unnecessarily, that it was actually in response to that outcry. And Van made it clear also that he was not supportive of that change, but that he would go with the will of the group on that. Okay. So MBD is next.
Well, actually, I have a question, comment, request for one of the items in finance.
Mm-hmm.
So our resolution, introductory 414, regarding the minimum wage. I think it's wonderful that we're doing it. It's really nice to see. We literally got everybody on this one. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Wow, we got everybody on.
Yes,
everybody signed up.
So that's nice. But I would like to propose some amendments to it. First amendment that I would like to propose is that we make the pay increase for part-time and seasonal employees retroactive to January 2021. Lord knows we have the dollars, and Lord knows that these low-wage workers can use the money. The second amendment that I would like to propose is that we look at adding a cost of living adjustment to the minimum wage for all low-wage workers going forward. One of the problems we historically have in low-wage work, minimum wage settings, is that we set the number, but we don't worry about that number increasing. So, hooray, hurrah, we set the new minimum wage, you've got $15 an hour, 5 years, 7 years, 15 years from now, it's still at that low number. It doesn't increase with the cost, it doesn't increase its cost normally. We clearly understand that for low-wage workers and for low-wage individuals, that the value of the dollar decreases over time, which is why Social Security and many programs have a built-in cost of living. I'm proposing that we do that in this case, so that going forward, no future council should have to come in and reset the minimum wage for low-wage workers in the city of Rockland. We actually effectively solve the problem going forward. Now, if the cost of living adjustments don't keep up, council can come in and reset that. But I think if we're serious about positively impacting our low-wage work, we have to make a long-term commitment to change. And that long-term commitment is expressed by adding a cost of living adjustment.
There's another amendment that we've been discussing. Was it either Miguel or Mitch had put that out, and it made a lot of sense. I think it was Mitch.
I missed it. It is. Let's talk about it.
Well, what I had referenced, and I was going to bring it to the whole group, but I just wanted to figure out if it was something that should be done in conjunction with this legislation or separately. But back in, I don't know, Katie, what year it was, the city passed a resolution about living wage, and not just about our own staff, but also related to contractors that we contract with, and making sure that that number continues to increase. As of right now, that number, which still exists, I think it's at like 14 something. So it would be lower than our own minimum wage. And I think if 15 is the number that, that we're shooting for, we should also hold the private contractors that the city contracts with accountable for the same goal. So I think we could wrap all those things up into one piece of legislation, or think about them separately.
And what about tying it to the 150% of the wage living lower living wage standard, as opposed to that flat number?
Yeah, the city basically, when they put this out, and I don't know, Katie, do you see what year it's from?
2001.
So 2001, it included steps that continued to kind of move things up. To your point, Mike, that it wasn't just about a number that stays there; it was about a percentage or a ratio. But it's kind of fallen behind, especially with inflation at what it is right now. So, yeah, I'd love to see us figure out what the strategy is to wrap all those things up together, and maybe we hold this and try to put everything together into a package for next month, or I don't know what people think makes sense.
What about the RMAPI recommendation, making sure that it reflects that what was put forth in RMAPI?
We want to start making all these changes. I would rather hold it and do it in a way where we can actually have good conversation. I mean, when you're talking about Mike's amendment that he proposes, if we want to do it right, we should have more conversation so we can see the budgetary impacts. And I don't want us to say we have all this money, because we don't. We have a lot of ARPA money, but we don't have a lot of ongoing money. If you look at the pages in the budget book, we have a huge structural budget gap in out years, $70 million. So we don't have all this money. So I want to be careful about us saying that we don't have all this money. We do have ARPA funds that is temporary, but this is a very important conversation. And I think that to the council president's point, the conversations around RMAPI is important, as well as Councilmember Gruber's point around contractors. And if we think we want to wrap them all in together, I would recommend holding it. And if we just want to get the minimum wage item done so we can get funds in people's pockets, I would say, okay, do that now. But I'd kind of lean on the wisdom of the group.
Well, let me pitch back. Let me go back and pitch. I'm not opposed to yes and. So I'm in favor of yes and. What I would hope that we would do now, though, is amend this item specifically to our workers and looking at that other legislation and amending that going forward. But we have an opportunity to do some significant good right now with an item that we have before us. It is a small amendment. Quite honestly, the dollars that I'm talking about, yeah, we do have all this money, and this is a drop in the bucket of the dollars that we have available to us.
Do you know what it costs now?
Let me finish. And it is a drop in the bucket for the retroactive pay that I'm proposing. So I get it, but you know what? It's gonna, if with us deciding that we're moving to $15 an hour in the legislation that we have before us right now as amended, that those elements that you mentioned are obviously already taken into consideration, because we're moving everybody to 15. Well, effective January 1, everybody's making 15 anyway. So the additional, that difference that I'm talking about between now for our seasonal workers going back to cover this year is a one-time, which sounds like something that ARPA was designed specifically and purposely for. And it targets a group and a population that is in desperate need of more dollars. So that's a small thing to do. I think the proposals and the amendments that I'm proposing are small amendments that are more than reasonable and cost effective and solve a long-term problem in our community with our low-wage workers. Yes, we have structural deficits. Yes, we'll deal with them. But at the same time, in my mind, justice demands that we take care of those who have least. And the folks who have least are the people we pay least. So if we can solve this problem and start moving that process that Mitch mentioned with the thinking around our contractors, that's a positive thing. But we set the standard. And I think, look, if we believe that $15 is a good, solid minimum wage, we shouldn't have a hard time understanding and accepting at this point in time that this time next year, $15 won't have the purchasing power that it has today. It solves a problem going forward, as Mitch brought up and brought to light. Yeah, we tried this before, but what we didn't do is we just didn't put in the cost of living adjustment. I think this solves that problem. So that's all.
How do we?
What I don't want to do, I don't want to hold this item. I want to amend it and move. And then we can look at other stuff and add to it. But let's not hold the item. Amend it and move.
Well, then that's what I want to do. I want to move it. And my only question is, I agree with all of it. I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I agree with every single bit of it. But again, what's the cost? That's something that we would have to find out. Just because if we're going to vote on something, we need to know what the cost is. That's all I'm asking. And if that takes time, then that means that the item would need to be held.
Well, all right. I'll tell you what. How about this? So my first proposed amendment was that we make the pay increase retroactive. If we hold off on the retroactive pay increase, do you have a problem with the cost of living adjustment?
Again, I don't have a problem with any of it, but I have a meeting with it. I don't have a problem with any of it. I have a conversation with the budget director tomorrow. I can ask him any of the amendments. Again, I will vote on. I would want to know all of the information. That's all.
Well, so I think that the first one with the retroactive, that number is relatively easy to ascertain because we already have a number of what the $15 increase would be. So the group, they would take that group, right? And the same way that the numbers that they used to come up with that, they've got in hand. So that one's not difficult to ascertain. The others may take a little more work. If we were looking at making it the one that we talked about being tied to contracts, it has a percentage, right? And that'll keep moving. We would need to know a little bit more about the impact on that one. And that might take a little time to calculate. But the retroactive one, that's an easy one.
Okay. And so what do folks think about the cost of living adjustment building that in? Is anybody not in favor of it?
I certainly support that. You know, whether or not we can do it with this current introductory, or if it's something that has to come next month, I'm in support of it though.
I'm in favor of it too, and I would just say, Mike, if we're gonna go back and do retroactive to January 2021, then there's not a giant difference between doing it next Tuesday and doing it in December. And I would prefer, I think if I had my way, I would prefer for there to be one piece of legislation that's about cost of living, or pardon me, that's about living wages and cost of living, that kind of delineates the same thing for how city hall staff or city staff are treated and how staff are treated and paid at contractors that we work with. And so I'd be in favor of holding it, figuring out how to get it all wrapped up into one, and having retroactive pay so it doesn't harm anybody in the process.
Well, but so, and I hear that, but the challenge is, one, I'm hoping that we could do it. Well, we're doing this now, and effectively, this is our November meeting. It was my hope that we could do this now and get these dollars. The sooner we do it, the sooner these dollars can get in the hands of the people who need them. So my first concern is for our workers, just because they're the easy ones to touch and get paid. The other items, the other things that you're proposing, I'm certainly in favor of them, but they take a little bit more work. These amendments are rather easy, rather simple. We add them in and we move forward going forward. You know, this stuff isn't hard. So there's no reason to hold the item for the other item. Let's pass this, amend it, and still work on the other items you're proposing. It's new that just makes sense. There's no reason to hold this item to add those other items. We can still do those other items and just keep rolling. It's part of our process.
I have a question. If everyone's
Go ahead.
Thank you. So if we're going to go back to January 2021, should we not just go back to March of 2020 when we started closing down City Hall? Should we start paying those employees that were continually working at City Hall that retroactive difference as well?
I don't see a problem with that thinking, Jose. The only reason I was going back to January is because the legislation that we're proposing here references the fact that in January 2021, we did this for our full-time employees. So that's the only reason I went back there. So, you know, I don't have a problem with going farther back. My only issue and my only concern then is, you know, is that going to hold up this legislation? Because what I'm really trying to do is get these dollars into the hands of those part-time seasonal workers that were excluded in the previous action.
We did what for the full-time employees?
Well, what we say in the transmittal is that, it's a trend here for your approval is joint resolution raising the minimum wage for all part-time and seasonal workers $50 an hour, effective January 2021, effective January 1, 2022. In January 2021, the city of Rochester raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour for all full-time and permanent employees. So
But you said March. You said we did it for for others in March.
Well, Jose was saying, well, in that case, let's go back. So if we're looking at these seasonal workers, let's go all the way back to March when we shut things down. And what I was saying to him is I don't have a problem with that. What I was referencing was in the introductory, in the transmittal for the item, it says we already raised the minimum wage for full-time permanent employees to $15 an hour, but we left the seasonals and the part-time. So that was the only reason why I was saying, hey, let's go back to that time frame, since this is an action that we've already taken. Let's be consistent and congruent with what we've already done. That was the only reason why I was saying, hey, let's go back to January.
So can I do this? If Katie's captured the conversation here, which there's not much disagreement here. It's just a sequencing of events. I can try to see how quickly we can get answers what the economic impact would be on these, and then try to report back ASAP. And then if we need more time to do them separately, we can do that. But if we can move forward on Tuesday with the other ones, we can take it that way. But I just want to make sure that it's clearly delineated what I'd be asking for from a fiscal standpoint, so I could report back in the most informed possible way to everybody.
Sounds like a plan. Yes. Thank you so much. Thanks. Okay. So will that conclude the finance? Okay, we'll go to MBD.
Yes. Thanks, Madam President.
Okay, nothing new, nothing crazy in NBD, except we're spending ARPA money, and that is a fabulous and beautiful thing. We're selling land. We're taking care of Susan B. Anthony. We're working with those guys on some stuff. Nice proposal that they sent over. We got the EPA Brownfields grant for Bull's Head, which is fabulous. RK Height, regular thing where they're helping us with our Relocation Act funding, which is something we've been doing for years. Nothing real crazy or wild there. City Rise grant, that's a nice thing. Got some money coming in. What do we got here? ESG grants. That's going out using CARES Act dollars. And if I would encourage folks to take a look at that, it's a really nice and well done transmittal. That's introductory number 386. Targeted Business Revitalization Grant, introductory number 387. I'm sure everybody looked at it, but I just think that's beautiful. So I'm like keeping that forever. It's going on my wall. What else? So we've also got the other CARES Act funding coming, which I just think is absolutely beautiful. What do we got? We've got the senior meals program, well received. A lot of the seniors really enjoyed that. I'm glad we're putting some dollars in that. The dollars for the senior homeowners program, additional dollars for that, just absolutely fabulous in my mind.
Yes.
And and then expanded dollars for the roofing program. So I mean, I'm in love. I'm happy. There's a saying, it involves pig, and we'll just leave it alone.
Gotcha.
That's it.
Now I have a taste of
Okay.
bacon.
I know. Well, I would hope not.
We'll make it that, believe me. Okay, PPW is next, I think.
Yeah, the really big thing for PPW right now is the first piece, 391, 392, which is related to the aqueduct program or aqueduct project. And I just want to point out, we talked about this a little bit in the agenda review, but this is a huge infrastructure project, and the 4.5 that is being proposed to spend right now is solely on preliminary design. That's how big the project is, and presumably, the actual costs itself of construction would be 10 to 15 times as much as that. But we'll sort that out once. That's part of what preliminary design is going to bring back, is what the costs would be. So I do think there continues to be a lot of, I hear at least a lot of concern and trepidation about removing the deck. And I will let you all know that I'm not convinced that it is the right thing or the wrong thing to do. I think that's part of the reason why you go out to design, especially when we don't have to, this is not City of Rochester money. This is state dollars, Rock the Riverway dollars coming in specifically for this purpose. And I think it's worthwhile seeing what comes back. The DES team is really excited about the team that's been put together to do the work. They got a lot of, they did get a lot of applicants. I was convinced that they would get more national and maybe even international applicants from design firms, but they only got a few that were, they said the flashiest one they got was from London, but that it was just so clear when they actually talked to the folks how these folks from London they were completely out of touch with what the reality of our city and this particular project was. And so the contract that we're being asked to vote on is going to Bergman, who is local, but they are putting a big team on this. I think it's critical because critical for them because this is potentially a central piece to someone's port. This is a huge project that is kind of unreplicated elsewhere. So I'm despite a lot of people calling me and asking me not to move forward with this, I really think that design is always worth looking at if we don't have to pay for it ourselves. And there's a lot of people who are also very excited about the removal. So that's where we are. The last thing I'll say about it is that the preliminary design is going to include a traffic study because remember, we'd be taking off a drivable bridge across the river. So I think we really need to understand traffic. It's going to really focus a lot on preservation. I think that's a huge, the historian in me cringes a little bit at this because it's such a reflection of our city's history, but that's a lot of what the preliminary design is going to look at is how can we kind of preserve that and make sure that we're not erasing anything. And it's going to include a lot of public engagement that I hope all of us encourage people to get out to and experience. So that's the big thing in PPW. Anyone have any questions about that?
I guess so it's kind of funny because the road surface was kind of glommed on to the original Erie Canal structure. So the notion that folks are really wedded to that, I mean, God, I hate to see a road ever go out of service, but at the same time, if we're trying to do something different, ripping the roof off maybe isn't a bad idea.
Well, and what I think is there's some tension about it too, because it's a lot of people who I typically hear from who want to see more connectedness and more bikeable and walkable streets and the city are the very same people who are concerned about this. And I think the reason for that is just because this is such a unique space. There is no other city. There's no other place where you can see early American history or American history kind of reflected in the canal, a subway, and then the highway system all in one place. And to remove any of that or to change any of that without really finding a way to kind of capture what it was, it doesn't feel good to me. But I'm really hopeful that a design process will come back that finds a great way of doing that and a creative way of doing that.
Well, I got to tell you, Mitch, I'm still grumpy that they took parking off the bridge, but I'm learning to get over it.
I'm glad. Mike.
I am so what is it when you're on a seesaw, with something. I am so excited about this project because the just the scope of it and what it portends is so exciting to me. On the other hand, I am so worried about this project because to make sure that somebody's going to pay for the whole thing. We've got some money now from the state, and I'm not sure who else, but this is a very expensive project, and I'd hate to see us with a hole in the middle of the city and not having gotten all the rest of the money we need to build it. As they say in Congress, the pay for us. We got all the pay for us.
Well, to your point, President Scott, I think that's a great reason to go forward with this, what we're voting on, because it's about a preliminary study that's going to give us a sense of what the price is. I don't think anyone really knows what it's going to cost right now. And of course, what it costs is going to depend on what the design is. So we figure out what's something that looks good, that takes in a lot of public engagement. How does it function? What does it look like? And what are the costs? And then I think, the city council and the Evans administration are going to have to make some really, really, big decisions. But the point I would say to people is we're not there yet. We don't know anything about it yet. So let's use state dollars to take the next step. And what DES would say is that this has been a conversation that's been on the table for more than 3 decades, and it's never gone anywhere. It's been conversation here, feasibility study there. This is actually a design with some price tags and some public engagement, and we've never gotten that far before. So let's see where it goes.
there was a really extensive public engagement process several years ago. It went no place. I mean, if people were really engaged, and there were a lot of great ideas, but you can't move something like this just with a plate full of ideas. So that's one of the things that's encouraging, that we're going to be able to get enough information to make some solid decisions about it. Okay. All right. Is that it for PPW? Thank you. Vice President, Lightfoot is not here, but I did want to let you know, with regard to policing, Councilmember Pio, did you get the news about the shooter from the west side being caught?
Knickerbocker,
Huh?
the Knickerbocker shooting?
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
So I was glad to see that, because we had Councilmember Pio and Vice President Lightfoot and I had met with leadership from Aquinas Thursday or Friday, and they understandably are extremely concerned about the condition of around the area regarding violence with the recent shootings and just the general decline overall. And we certainly listened, but we had no concrete proposals. We assured them that we are taking measures to address those things that we all see as the cause of this stuff. You can't just take shooters off the street. You have to deal with the things that are generating this kind of behavior in terms of poverty and unemployment and drugs and all of that, and letting them know that the city has some tremendous efforts underway, but it will take a while to turn that ship around. But we are working on it. And having said that, though, I was very glad to see that they were able to arrest the person in the shooting, the most recent shooting. And we'll share that with Mr. Mancini and others who are waiting to hear back from us about, okay, what you gonna do? What are you gonna do? This is very concerning, because Aquinas is a tremendously important neighbor for us in the Northwest. And none of us want to see that go. But you have to recognize that when people are being subjected to that kind of violence and potentially danger, you're not going to spend money like that and send your kids through that. We recognize that we've got issues around many of our schools, but the difference is, I think in this case, for sure, that it's a private school and people are paying significant sums to come into our neighborhood and into our school with the thought of having to dodge bullets. So I don't know what else we can do, but I'm sure we're gonna keep working with and talking with the school and seeing what other kind of measures can be accelerated over in that area. Malik, I don't know if they reached out to you, but if they haven't, they will.
Yeah. I think, and I'm scheduled to visit Aquinas, I believe, in December. But yeah, and the one thing I'll say, and I won't get off on a tangent, is that we all know that poverty and hopelessness has been around for a very long time. My grandfather, I tell people all the time, he was a sharecropper and didn't have a nickel to his name, but he didn't go around shooting folk. So we still got to have standards for our folks to know that violence is not the answer. We still have to put our foot down there, even though we know that mental health and other things are challenges. What we're seeing now is just not normal, and we still can say, while at the same time we're going to do the things to deal with the social issues. This shootings like this are totally unacceptable. We got to have balance.
Yep. Okay. I don't know if there were any issues in the items coming out of public safety, human service that you all want to lift up or refer on for additional conversation.
I mean, the only thing I would say, President Scott, is that the investments in the Office of Business Intelligence are very welcomed. But I'm gonna kind of repeat some of the stuff I said last month too. I don't know why we would do that right now before we have a new permanent chief and more, and this is probably a little outside of my lane and something that Malik can or cannot speak to if he wants, but it's a lot of money to invest in a department that I feel like is in a very kind of transitional stage. And that concerns me because I want to make sure that the right things are being invested in, the right people are being invested in, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how to answer that stuff, but I presume that that's something that we'd want the next chief of police, permanent chief of police, to do. So that's the only thing I'd want to raise for discussion now or some other time.
But aren't the items that are in the Office of Business Intelligence, they're consistent with a plan, if you will, that's been developed over years, that this is not new. This is something that we had pushed for. Just
Yeah,
did not have money to do.
Sorry, it was one of the questions that I asked. I don't think we've gotten responses yet, but it's $1.9 million, and I think a lot of it is personnel. And yeah, that to me makes. I mean, obviously, we just need more people who are doing the data analysis and who are working on that. But what it doesn't say is if there's equipment and things like that being purchased. And if that's the case, I'm sure, like with anything, you can go with option 1, option 2, or maybe option 10 and 20. And again, I'd want to know that. I'd want to know who's making those decisions and that those are the right decisions being made for the tenure of the next chief. But I don't know if it's just personnel or if it's also materials. We'll get that back in agenda review, I think.
Okay. All right. There's nothing else under that. I wanted to bring everybody up to speed, or make sure everyone's up to speed about our efforts to establish Indigenous Peoples Day. I said our, maybe I should say my, because we've not really talked about it, but it's something that I'm really passionate about. I'd been speaking with Kathleen Castanilla and Ronnie, whose last name I can't remember, who have been working on this for quite some time. I know that we have Indigenous Peoples Day. We have a resolution, but what we're looking for now to do is to not have a Columbus Day, but have an Indigenous Peoples Day instead. A lot of work has been done, and we had developed like a path forward, which included setting up conversation circles, because one of the things that you'll find out is even Italian people are not necessarily wed to Columbus Day in the way that we assume that they are. And we definitely know that what's being taught in the schools is not consistent with historical fact. I'm very concerned about us not taking those steps to advance the awareness of what Indigenous people have contributed in their role in this country. So what we're doing, the conversation circles have been held, and I forget what the other steps are, but we're putting the other pieces together in order to move toward not establishing Indigenous Peoples Day. There are about 10 or 12 cities that no longer have Columbus Day. It's gone. They do have Indigenous Peoples Day. So one of the things I'm doing is looking at how they did it, what steps they took in order to do that, and what the results were, what the activities were around it. Questions, comments?
Yeah,
No, I just-
one question.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of timeline, do you envision that this is something we might see before the end of this year, or is this something that might carry on into the future?
I'm looking at, I want to plant the seed. I'm thinking January. we should, the stuff that we've laid out could be done by January. That you all can, if you would take that flag forward, you could do it in January.
Great, thank you.
Well,
Anything
okay. I just want to talk, well, since we're kind of out there, I'm just going to toss this out there, let folks think about it. So I went to Interim Junior High School 150 years ago. And attached to Interim Junior High School was Nathaniel Rochester Community School.
Okay, I
And
know where we're going.
well, maybe you do, maybe
It's
you
okay.
don't.
Go ahead.
So the school district in their wisdom, and I absolutely agree with them, said, you know what, we shouldn't have a school named for a slaveholder who founded a city. And I agree with them. So if the name isn't good enough for a school, why is it good enough for a city? So I'm just going to toss it out there and let's start having a conversation and thinking about, what do we rename this city? And I'm just going to toss out there, how about Genesee City? It's a Native American name. It's not something that we have to learn how to repronounce. And there happens to be a name that happens to be a river that runs through it with the name. But if we're serious about being culturally competent and taking the past actions of folks, and in some cases, I would say, it's a challenge to hold historical figures to the sensibilities of the present day. But it is a thing that we are doing. And when you're talking about getting rid of Columbus Day, that's exactly what you're talking about doing. Well, okay, folks, it's called Rochester. I don't know how they came up with Buffalo, but I get Syracuse, Utica, some of the other names you get. But, Rochester, that one's real clear. It's named for a slaveholder in a northern state. How's that cool?
I don't have a direct answer for that, Mike. I think that I would love to explore what the logistics would look like to change the name of the city, because there
easy, brother.
There are so many things involved. But I do want to mention something that I discussed with President Scott a little while ago when we were starting to get inquiries about Charles Carroll Plaza, which I would be in full support of renaming. And I had a conversation after talking to President Scott with the Office of the City Historian, which is something that, it's amazing that we have that. So I was speaking to Christine. I've asked her to pull a whole list of every public place that is named after someone, every public place in the city of Rochester that is named after someone who held slaves. I think what becomes very challenging with that is, you look at something like street names, and you have Adams Street over in Cornhill, and well, that's a bad example. But you have Jefferson, right? Jefferson, and the assumption there is that probably that street was named for Thomas Jefferson. But I think it becomes very difficult when you're dealing with national figures, presidents. So what I said to, because I just think not difficult to ascertain what's right or wrong, difficult to not to have like a finite line. Because the research could go on forever that way. So my recommendation to Christine was to really focus on local and regional people, and again, public places more so than street names. And I'm hopeful that she's going to have that list to be shared with all of council, hopefully in the next week or two. And then I would love to move forward with something like a resolution that commits to renaming those places, which is not as big or as bold as changing the name of the city, but it feels a lot more doable at the moment.
Well, nothing's doable till you try. And I hear you, Mitch, and I'm not opposed to anything you're saying, but there's this nice big one, real big, happens to be the name of the city. We know he's a slaveholder. We know he was a slaveholder. We know his history. So that one we ain't got to figure out. Now the question is, how do you do it, and what is the next name? But I'll just put it out there as a public conversation. Not necessarily anything that council probably needs to spend a whole lot of time and energy on, but if we're gonna roll back Columbus Day, yeah, that was kind of easy, but that's kind of like the speck in the other guy's eye, and you're missing the plank in your own.
Well, talking about specks and planks, that isn't that portrait still up over is it over the elevator in City Hall?
I'll go look on my way out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
yeah, Nathaniel Rochester, I believe there's a big portrait.
well, we can always box them.
So the name of the city is, I didn't think you were going there, Mike. I thought you were going with the school.
Well, the school was easy. I'm like, okay, we can't have this guy's name on the school, really? We can't have his name on the school? How about the whole city? Oh, okay, well, maybe that's a bridge too far, really. Bridge too far. Well, and that just kind of goes back to the bridge, Mitch.
I don't
So
think, for what it's worth, I don't think it's a bridge too far. I'm fascinated by the logistics of changing the name of the city. I can't even begin to compute all the things that go into it because of, I just can't. It's something I'd love to
Right,
think
so
about.
when you start weighing out time and effort and all of that, it's okay now. How much time and effort do I have, and where do I want to put it? And that
I
one might take.
put it out there as an item for public discussion. I don't think council
Okay.
a whole lot of
Oh.
time. We have folks who love this kind of stuff. Let them.
Alrighty.
I would like to publicly state I am completely against this, but whatever the people want, the people deserve, I just want to make sure we know I'm completely against it.
Oh,
I
you
get
know what?
it. I get it all. I get it.
I'm not surprised at that because, for you, it's like, okay, here's all this woke stuff that they're doing. It is like, they're just really too woke. And it does feel,
Yeah, I mean,
Bob Lonsberry, he'll have something to talk about.
yeah, there you go. I see. I'm not even against taking away Columbus Day. Like, have Columbus Day. If you want to celebrate Columbus Day, go ahead. Indigenous Day could be completely separate that other people want to go for. Like, have your own thing. I just don't care enough, I guess. But whatever people want.
and that's why the thing with the conversation circles and the education are so important. Because when you read about Columbus, what he really was and what he stood for, that's just not somebody you want to have a whole day for. And the thing that bothers me is that we all grew up believing that Columbus was the man. Had it not been for Columbus, those poor Indians, they would have had a rough time. We didn't even know all the stuff he did before he got there. It was just so negative. It was just gruesome. So I think that's one of the things that makes it so important too. Not saying that slaveholders were any different, but we don't necessarily, well, we got some holidays, we got President's Day, and that includes all of them. What's the one that comes just before that though? Is it Lincoln? One of them. But anyway,
Birthday.
yeah. I just feel like we were bamboozled and run amok regarding Columbus. So anyway, so we can get to our boards and commissions. And I don't have the list in front of me if you wanna.
I can
I
run
don't
down
have
them.
it. I don't have anything to report for the Redco meeting. I was not in town for it. I was at a conference. I don't have anything for you.
Okay.
Next up would be Mitch with ABC, the Public Library, Peace Village. I think that's it. Oh, and Rays.
I don't have anything on Rays. We just got a update from them, but on ABC, I would just say that, they're continuing to work through the implications of the vaccine mandate, in particular because of Head Start, but a number of other places where they're federally contracted. So I think they've done a really nice job in taking the lead in thinking through what the appropriate policies are and how to do this in the best way for everyone. So there's that. the library continues, I think, to do some really incredible work. Right now, there's a big discussion at the library about genealogy and what the library board in terms of what to or not to allow in terms of some of those genealogy companies that come in and I think there's people have some concerns about privacy and proprietary rights over data, but there's some good discussion having. It's a really active and engaged board. I'll make sure you guys get the last version of minutes as soon as those come out. And then with Peace Village, I would just say there's some pretty significant conversations happening right now with the administration, with this board. I'm trying to make sure the county is involved too, because it's not in a good place right now, Peace Village as an entity. A lot of the comments when we were asked when city council was asked to approve it, a lot of the comments was about how this is a self-policing place, but it has not proven to be that way. That comes from some of the providers who are there. And I really think there needs to be some solutions, because it can't keep going on as it is right now. It's not a place where there are some people who I think would want to be there and don't feel safe going there, according to the people who are doing the outreach. So I will continue. I'm having conversations right now, again, with Commissioner Kirkmeyer, with people from DHS, the county, and trying to think through how there can be a more regular form of outreach there that potentially has some funding with it as well, so that it's not just when we can get them, we have them, but there's consistent outreach and a consistent effort to keep moving people into temporary and permanent housing if they're so inclined. So to be continued. And I'm sorry that I'll have to leave right at 1:30. I apologize.
Councilmember Harris just sent the land bank report from this month. So that is all set. For the people we have on the call, it would be the Monroe County Board of Health.
Yeah, so not a big update there either. We did get an official response on ivermectin last month. So that was circulated. In addition to that, we had some hearings for certain restaurants that were out of compliance in terms of having the right equipment and not passing health and safety inspections. So we did approve some sanctions there. Other than that, light month for Board of Health. The good news is that it seems like our COVID numbers are starting to plateau. So hopefully we maintain that trend moving forward.
And then last up would be you.
The ethics board did not, the meeting, hasn't been held yet. It's probably next week. No, it'd be the week after that for the ethics board. And so that may be it, right?
Yep.
Okay. Then we're right on time, right on the minute.
President Scott, can I just ask a quick question about Board of Ethics?
Sure. Mhm.
Is it written into the like the bylaws of the Board of Ethics that it is council president who is the representative or the convener?
I don't think so. I think it was like a default.
Got it. So
Yeah.
so that's going to be something that we all have to think about collectively if you actually retire in 2 months.
What do you mean if I actually retire?
I mean, I'm thinking maybe you'll win a writing campaign tomorrow. Who knows?
Not likely.
But yeah, I just wanted to check if if that's something that we would need to think about, if it automatically goes to whoever the next council president is.
No, that's default. That was default.
Got it.
I will add it to my list of impending things.
Okay, well, thank you all. Have a great week. I'm sure we'll be chatting again very, very soon.